You cannot see money with your eyes. In late 1974, I purchased a small condominium on the fringes of Waikiki as one of my first investment properties. Price was 56,000 for a cute two-bedroom, one bath unit in average building. It was a perfect retail unit and I knew it would rent quickly. I drove over to my rich dad's office, all excited about showing him the deal. He glanced at the documents in less than a minute. He looked up and asked, "How much money are you losing a month?" "About $1,000 a month," I said. "Don't be foolish," Rich Dad said. "I haven't gone over the numbers, but I can already tell from your written documents that you are losing much more than that. And besides, why in the world would you knowingly invest in something that loses money?" Well, the unit looked nice and I thought it was a good deal. "A little paint and the place would be good as new," I said. "That doesn't justify knowingly losing money," Rich Dad said. "Well, my real estate agent said no to worry about losing money every month. He said that in few years price of this unit will double, and in addition the government gives me a tax break on money I lose. Besides, it was such a good deal that I was afraid someone else would buy it if I didn't." Rich Dad stood and closed his office door. When he did that, I knew I was about to be chewed out as well as to, uh, to as well as to be taught an important lesson. I had been through these types of educational sessions before. "So how much money are you losing a month?" Rich Dad asked again. "About $100 a month," I repeated nervously. Rich Dad shook his head and he scanned the documents. The lesson was about to begin. On that day, I learned more about money and investing than I had in all my previous 27 years of life. Rich Dad was happy that I had taken the initiative and invested in property, but I had made some grave mistakes that could have been a financial disaster. However, the lessons I learned from that one investments have made me millions over the years. "Money is seen with your mind. It is not what your eyes see," said Rich Dad. "A piece of real estate is a piece of real estate. A company stock certificate is a company stock certificate. You can see those things, but it is what you cannot see that is important. It is the deal, the financial agreement, the market, the management, the risk factors, the cash flow, the corporate structuring, the tax laws, and thousand other things that make something a good investment or not." He then proceeded to tear the deal apart with questions. "Why would you pay such a high interest rate? What do you figure your return or on investment to be? How does this investment fit into your long term financial strategy? What vacancy factors are you using? What is your cap rate? Have you checked the association's history assessments? Have you figured in management costs? What percentage rate did you use to computer repairs? Did you know that the city just announced it will be tearing up and roads in that area changing traffic pattern? A major thoroughfare will run right in front of your building. Residents are moving to avoid the year long project. Did you know that? I know the market trend is up today, but do you know what is driving that trend? The business economics or grid. How long do you think the trend will be up? What happens if this place is not rented? And if it isn't, how long can you keep it afloat and yourself afloat? And again, what goes on in head to make you think of that losing money is a good deal? That really has me worried. It looked like a good deal, I said, deflated. My rich dad smiled, stood up, and shook my hand. I am glad you take action, he said. Most people think but never do. If you do something, you make mistakes, and it is form of our mistake that we learn the most. Remember that anything important cannot really be learned in the classroom. It must be learned by taking action, making mistakes and then correcting them. That is when wisdom sets in. I felt like little better and now I was ready to learn. Most people said rich dad invest 95% with their eyes and 5% with their minds. Rich dad went on to explain that people look at piece of real estate or name of stock and often make their decision based on their eyes, see or what tells them. On a hot tip from a fellow worker, they often buy emotionally instead of rationally. That is why 9 out of 10 investors do not make money, said Rich Dad. While they do not necessarily lose money, they just do not make money. They just sort of break even, making some and losing some. That is because they invest with their eyes and emotions rather than with their minds. Many people invest because they want to get rich quickly. So instead of becoming investors, they wind up being dreamers, hustlers, gamblers, and crooks. The world is filled with them. So let's sit down, go back over this losing deal you just bought, and I will teach you how to turn them into winning deal. I'll begin to teach your mind to see what your eyes cannot. From bad to good. The next morning I went back to real estate agent, rejected the agreement and reopened negotiation. It was not pleasant process, but I learned a lot. 3 days later I returned to see my rich dad. The price had stayed the same. The agent got his full commission because he deserved it. He had worked hard for it. But while the price remained the same, the terms of investment were vastly different. By renegotiating the interest rate, payment terms, and amortization period, instead of losing money, I was now certain of making net profit of $80 per month, even after management fee and an allowance for vacancy was factored in. I could even lower my rent and still make money. If the market went bad, I would definitely raise the rent if market got better. I estimated that you were going to lose at least $150 per month, said Rich Dad. Probably more if you had continued to lose $150 per month based on your salary and expenses. How many of the deals could you afford? Barely one, I replied. Most months I do not have an extra $150. If I had done the original deal, I would have struggled financially every month. Even after tax breaks, I might even have had take an extra job to pay for his investment. And now how many of these deals at $80 positive cash flow can you afford? Asked Rich Dad. I smiled and said, as many as I can get my hands on. Rich Dad nodded in approval. Now go out there and get your hands on more of them. A few years later, the real estate prices in Hawaii did skyrocket, but instead of having only one property go up in value, I had seven double in value. That is the power of little financial intelligence. You can't do that. An important side note to my first real estate investment. When I took my new offer back to real estate agent, all he said to me was, "You can't do that." What took the longest time was convincing the agent to start thinking about What took the longest time was convincing the agent to start thinking about how we could do what I wanted done. In any event, there were many lessons I learned from this one investment, and one of those lessons was to realize that when someone says to you, you can't do that, they may have one finger pointing forward you, but three fingers are pointing backward at them. Rich Dad taught me you can't do that doesn't necessarily mean you can't. It more often means they can't. A classic example took place many years ago when people said, the Wright brothers, you can't do that. Thank goodness, Wright brothers did not listen. 1.4 trillion looking for a home. Every day, 1.4 trillion orbits the planet electronically, and it is increasing. There is more money being created and available today than ever before. The problem is money is invisible. Today the bulk of it is electronic. So when people look for money with their eyes, they fail to see anything. Most people struggle to live from paycheck to paycheck, and yet 1.4 trillion files around the world every day looking for someone who wants it, looking for someone who knows how to take care of it, nurture it, and grow it. If you know how to take care of money, money will flock to you and be thrown at you. People will beg you to take it. But if you do not know how to care for money, money will stay away from you. Remember Rich Dad's definition of financial intelligence. It is not how much money you make, but how much money you keep, how hard it works for you, and how many generations you keep it for. The blind leading the world. The average person is 95% eyes and only 5% mind when they invest, said Rich Dad. If you want to become professional on business and investor side of quadrant, you need to train your eyes to be 5% and train your mind to see other 95%. Rich Dad went on to explain that people who trained their minds to see money had tremendous power over people who did not. He was adamant about whom I took financial advice for. The reason most people struggle financially is because they make advice from people who are also mentally blind to money. It is classic tale of blind leading to blind. If you want money to come to you, you must know how to take care of it. If money is not first in your head, it will not stick to your hands. If it does not stick to your hands, then money and people with money will stay away from you. Train your brain to see money. So, what is the first step in training your brain to see money? The answer is easy. The answer is financial literacy. It begins with ability to understand the words and number systems of capitalism. If you do not understand words or the letters or the numbers, you might as well be speaking. If you look at cash flow quadrant, each quadrant is like a different country. They do not all use same words. And if you do not understand the words, you will not understand the numbers. For example, if a medical doctor says your systolic is 120 and diastolic is 80, is that good or bad? Is that all you need to know for your health? The answer is obviously no, yet it is a start. It would be like asking my stock's price to earning ratio is 12 and my apartment house cap rate is 12. Is that all I need to know for my wealth? Again, the answer is no. But it is a start. At least we are beginning to speak same words and use the same numbers. And that is where financial literacy, which is basis of financial intelligence begins. It begins with knowing the words and numbers. Doctor is speaking from the self-employed quadrant. and others is speaking with the words and numbers of investor quadrant. They might as well be different foreign languages. I disagree when someone says to me, it takes money to make money. In my opinion, the ability to make money with money begins with understanding words and numbers. As my rich dad always said, if money is not first in your head, it will not stick to your hands. Know what real risk is. The second step in training your brain to see money is to learn to recognize what real risk is. When people say to me that investing is risky, I simply say investing is not risky, being uneducated is risky. Investing is much like flying. If you have been to flight school and spent number of years gaining experience, then flying is fun and exciting. But if you have never been to flight school, I would recommend leaving the flying to someone else. Bad advice is risky. Rich Dad firmly believed that any financial advice was better than no financial advice. He was a man with an open mind. He was courteous and listened to many people, but ultimately he relied on his own financial intelligence to make his decisions. If you do not know anything, then any advice is better than no advice. But if you cannot tell the difference between bad advice and good advice, then that is risky. Rich Dad firmly believed that most people struggled financially because they operated on financial information handed down from parent to child, and most people do not come from financially sound families. Bad financial advice is risky, and most of the bad advice is handed out at home. He often said, not because of what is said, but because of what is done. Children learn by example more than words. Your advisors are only as smart as you. Rich Dad said, your advisors can only be as smart as you are. If you are not smart, they cannot tell you that much. If you are financially well educated, competent advisors can give you more sophisticated financial advice. If you are financially naive, they must law offer you only safe and secure financial strategies. If you are an sophisticated investor, they can only offer low risk, low yield investment. They will often recommend diversification for unsophisticated investors. Few advisors choose to take the time to teach you. Their time is also money. So if you will take it upon yourself to become financially educated, manage your money well, then a competent advisor can inform you about investment and strategies that only a few will ever see. But first, you must do your part to get educated. Always remember your advisor can only be as smart as you. Is your banker lying to you? Rich Dad had several bankers he dealt with. They were an important part of his financial team. While he was close friends with and respected his bankers, he always felt that he had to watch out for his own best interest, as he expected bankers to look out for their own best interest. After my 1974 investment experience, he asked me this: when banker says that your house is an asset, they are telling you the truth. Since most people are not financially literate and do not know the game of money, they often must take the opinion and advice of people they tend to trust. If you are not financially literate, then you need to trust someone you hope is financially literate. Many people invest or manage their money based on someone else's recommendations more than their own, and that is risky. They are not lying, they are just not telling you the truth. The fact is, when a banker tells you your house is an asset, they are not really lying to you. They are just not telling you the whole truth. While your house is an asset, they simply do not say whose asset it is. For if you read financial statements, it is easy to see that your house is not your asset. It is banker's asset. Remember my rich dad's definition of an asset and liability from Rich Dad Poor Dad. An asset puts money into my pocket, a liability takes money out of my pocket. People on left side of quadrant do not really need to know the difference. Most of them are happy to feel secure in their jobs, have a nice house they think they own, they feel proud of, and think they are in control of. Nobody will take it away from them as long as they make those payments and make those payments they do. But people on the right side of quadrant need to know the difference. To be financially literate and financially intelligent means being able to understand the big picture of money. Financially astute people know that a mortgage does not show up an asset but as a liability on your balance sheet. Your mortgage actually shows up as an asset on balance sheet across town. It shows up as an asset on bank balance sheet, not yours. Anyone who has taken accounting knows that balance sheet must balance, but where does it balances? It does not really balance on your balance sheet. If you look at bank balance sheet, this is the story the numbers really tell. This is bank's balance sheet. Now it balances. Now it makes sense. The B and I accounting, but this is not way it is taught in business accounting. In accounting, you would show the value of your home as an asset and mortgage as a liability. Also, an important point to note is that the value of your home is an opinion which fluctuates with market, while your mortgage is a definite liability not affected by market. For business and investors, however, value of your home is not considered an asset because it does not generate cash flow. What happens if you pay off your mortgage? Many people ask me, what happens if I pay off my mortgage? Is my house an asset then? And my reply is most cases the answer is still no, it's still a liability. There are several reasons for my answer. One is maintenance and general upkeep. Property is like a car, even if you own it free and clear, it costs you money to operate. And once things start to break, everything begins to break. And in most cases, people pay for repairs and their house and car after tax dollars. A person in business and investor quadrants only includes property as an asset if it generates income through positive cash flow. But the main reason a house, even without a mortgage, is still a liability is because you still do not own it, really. The government still taxes you even if you own it. Just stop paying your property taxes, and again you will find out who really owns your property. That is where tax lien certificates come from, which I wrote about Rich Dad Poor Dad. Tax lien certificates are excellent way to receive at least 16% interest on your money. If homeowners do not pay their property taxes, the government charges them interest on taxes on at rate of 10% to 50%. Talk about usury. If you don't pay the property taxes and someone like me pays them for you, then in many cases states you owe me the taxes plus interest. If you do not pay the taxes and interest within certain amount of time, I get to Take your house just for money I put up. In most states, property taxes take priority in repayment, even before bank's mortgage. I have had opportunity to buy a house. I paid the taxes for less than $3,500. What about saving? Are they assets? Now your savings really are assets. That's the good news. But again, if you read financial statements, you will see total picture. While it is true that your savings are asset, when you look across town at the bank balance sheet, your savings show up as liability. This is what your savings and checkbook balance look like in asset column. So if this is our balance sheet, then in asset column savings and checkbook balance looks like this. This is how your saving and your checkbook balance are carried on your bank balance sheet. Why is your saving and checkbook balance a liability to bank? They have to pay you interest for your money, and it costs them money to safeguard it. If you can get the significance of these few drawings and words, you might begin to better understand what the eyes cannot see about game of money. Why you don't get a tax break for saving money? If you notice, you get a tax break for buying a house and going into debt, but you do not get a tax break for saving money. Have you ever wondered why? I do not have the exact answer, but I can speculate. One big reason is because your savings are liability to banks. Why would they ask the government to pass a law that would encourage you to put money in their bank? Money that would be a liability to them. They don't need your savings. Besides, bank really do not need your savings. They don't need much in deposits because they can magnify money at least 10 times. If you put a single $1 note in bank, by the law the bank can lend out $10, and depending upon reserve limits imposed by central bank, possibly as much as $20. That means your single $1 suddenly becomes $10 or more. It is magic. When my rich dad showed me that, I fell in love with the idea. At that point, I knew that I wanted to own a bank and not go to school to become a banker. On the top of that, bank might pay you only 5% interest on that $1. You as a consumer feel secure because the bank is paying you some money on your money. Banks see this as a good customer relations because if you have savings with them, you may come in and borrow for them from them. They want you to borrow because they can then charge 9% or more to you on what you borrow. While you may make 5% on that $1, the bank can make 9% or more on the $10 debt your single dollar has generated. Recently, I received a new credit card that advertised 8.9% interest. But if you understood the legal jargon in the fine print, it was really 23%. Needless to say, that credit card was cut in half and mailed back. They get your savings anyway. The other reason they don't offer a tax break for saving is more obvious. If you can read the numbers and see which way cash is flowing, you will notice that they will get your savings anyway. The money you could be saving in your asset column is flowing instead of your liability column in the form of interest payments on your mortgage in their asset column. The cash flow patterns looks like this. So this is cash flow pattern. Now this is our financial statement and this is bank statement. This is bank's financial statement. So this was financial statement hours. So in bank financial statement, income, interest, expenses, and our mortgage goes to interest from balance sheet to income statement. That is why they don't need the government to give you tax incentive to save. They will get your savings anyway in the form of interest payments on debt. Politicians are not about the mess with the system because the banks, insurance companies, building industry, brokerage houses and other contribution contribute a lot of money to political campaigns, and the politicians know the name of the game. The name of the game. In 1974, my rich dad was upset because the game was played against me and I did not know. I had bought this investment real estate and had taken losing position. Yet I had been led to believe it was winning position. I'm glad you entered the game, said Rich Dad. But because no one has ever told you what the game is, you have just been sucked over by losing team. Rich Dad then explained the basics of the game. The name of game of capitalism is who in debt to whom. Once I knew the game, he said, then I could be a better player instead of someone who just had a game run all over them. The more people you are in debt to, the poorer you are. The more people you are in debt to, the poorer you are, said Rich Dad. And the more people you have in debt to, the wealthier you are. That is the game. As I said, I struggled to keep my mind open. So I stayed silent and let him explain. He was not saying it maliciously, he was just explaining the game as he saw it. We are all in debt to someone else. The problems occur when debt gets out of balance. Unfortunately, the poor people of this world have been run over so by so hard by the game. They often can't get any deeper into debt. The same is true for poor countries. The world simply takes from the poor, the weak, the financially uninformed. If you have too much debt, the world takes everything you have, your time, your work, your home, your life, your confidence, and then they take your dignity if you let them. I did not make up this game. I do not make the rules, but I do know the game. Money is debt. Rich Dad went to explain that even our currency is not an instrument of equity, but an instrument of debt. Every dollar bill used to be backed by gold or silver, but is now IOU guaranteed to be paid by taxpayers of issuing country. As long as the rest world has confidence in American taxpayers to work and pay for this IOU called money, the world will have confidence in our dollar. If that key element of money, which is confidence, suddenly disappears, the economy comes down like house of cards. And house of card has come down many times throughout history. Take the example of German Weimar government marks that became utterly worthless just before World War II. As one story goes, this elderly woman was pushing a wheelbarrow full of marks to buy a loaf of bread. When she turned her back, someone stole her wheelbarrow and left the pile of worthless money all over the street. That is why most money today is known as flat money, which is money that cannot be converted to something tangible like gold or silver. The money is only as good as long as people have confidence in the government backing it. The other definition of flat is dictatorial order or degree given by person or group having complete authority. Today much of global economy is based on debt and confidence. As long as we keep holding hands and no one break ranks, everything will be fine. And world fine is acronym for feeling insecure, neurotic and emotional. Going back to 1974 when I was learning how to buy that $56,000 condo, my rich dad taught me an important lesson on how to structure deals. Who in debt to whom is the name of game, said rich dad, and somebody just stuck you with the debt. It is like going to dinner with 10 friends. You go to the restroom, when you come back, bill is there, but 10 friends are gone. If you are going to play the game, then you had best learn the game, know the rules, speak the same language, and know with whom you are playing. If not interested, instead of playing the game will be played on you. It is only a game. At first, I got angry when my rich dad told me, but I listened and did my best to understand it. Finally, he put me into context that I could understand. You love playing football, don't you? He asked. I nodded my head. I love the game, I said. Well, money is my game, said Rich Dad. I love the money game. But for many people, money is not a game, I said. That is correct, said Rich Dad. For most people, it is survival. For most people, money is a game they are forced to play and they hate it. Unfortunately, the more civilized we get, the more money becomes part of our lives. Rich Dad draw cash flow quadrant. Just look at this as a tennis court or a football field or a soccer field. If you are going to play the money game, which team do you want to be on? The employees, self employed, business owners, or investors? Or which side court of the court do you want to be on? The right side or the left? I pointed to right side of the quadrant. If you take on a debt and risk, you should be paid. Look at it my way, said Rich Dad. You are willing to pay $56,000 for this condo in the sky. You are signing for debt. You take the risk. The tenant pays less in a rent than what it costs to live in there. So you are subsidizing that person's housing. Does that make sense to you? I shook my head no. This is the way I play the game, said Rich Dad. From now on, if you take on a debt and risk, then you should get paid. Got that? I nodded my head. Making money is a common sense, said Rich Dad. It is not rocket science, but unfortunately, when it comes to money, common sense is uncommon. A banker tells you to take on debt tells you that the government will give you a tax break for something that really does not make fundamental economic sense, and then a real estate salesperson tells you to sign the papers because he can find a tenant who will pay less than you are paying. Just because his option, the price will go up. If that makes sense to you, then you and I do not share the same common sense. I just stood up there. I heard something he said, and I had to admit that I had gotten so excited by what I thought looked like good deal that my logic went off the window. I could not analyze the deal because the deal looked good. I had gotten emotional with greed and excitement, and I was no longer able to hear what the numbers and words were trying to tell me. It was then that Rich Dad gave me an important rule that he has always used. Your profit is made when you buy, not when you sell. Rich Dad had to be certain. that whether debt or risk he took on, it had to make sense from the day he bought it. It had to make sense if economy got worse, and it had to make sense if economy got better. He never bought on tax tricks or crystal balls forecast of the future. A deal had to make sound economic sense in good times and in bad. It was beginning to understand game of money as he saw it, and the game of money was to see others become in debt to you and to be careful whom whom you become in debt to. Today I still hear his words. If you take on risk and debt, make sure you get paid for it. Rich dad and his debt, but he was careful when he took it on. Be careful when you take on debt, was his advice. If you take on debt personally, make sure it's small. If you take on large debt, make sure someone else is paying for it. He saw the game of money and debt as game that he played on to you, played on me, played on someone. It's played from business to business and played from country to country. He saw it only as a game. The problem is for most people money is not a game. For many people money is survival, often life itself, and because no one explained the game to them, they still believe bankers who say house is an asset. The importance of facts versus opinions. Rich Dad continued his lesson. If you want to be successful on the right side, when it comes to money, you have got to know the difference between facts and opinions. You cannot blindly accept financial advice the way people on the left side do. You must know the numbers, you must know the facts, and the numbers tells you the facts. Your financial survival depends on facts, not some friend or advisor's worldly opinions. I don't understand what is big deal about something being a fact or opinion. I asked, is one better than other? No, replied Rich Dad. Just know when something is fact and when something is an opinion. Still puzzled, I stood there with confused look on my face. What is your family's home worth? Asked Rich Dad. He was using an example to help me out of the confusion. Oh, I know, I replied quickly. My parents are thinking about selling, so they had an real estate agent come in and give us an appraisal. They said the house was worth $36,000. That means my dad's net worth increased by $16,000 because he only paid 20,000 for it 5 years ago. So the appraisal and the dad's net worth, a fact or an opinion? Asked Rich Dad. I thought about it for a while and understood what he was getting at. Both are opinions, aren't they? Rich Dad nodded his head. Very good. Most people struggle financially because they spend their lives using opinions rather than facts when making financial decisions. Opinions such as your house is an asset, the price of real estate always goes up, blue chip stocks are the best investments. It takes money to make money. Blue chip stocks are your best investment. It takes money to make money. Stock not always outperform real estate. You should diversify your portfolio. You have to be dishonest to be rich. Investing is risky currency. I sat there, deep in thought, realizing that most of what I heard about money at home was really people's opinion, not facts. Is gold an asset? Asked rich dad, snatching me out of my daily life. Yes, of course, I replied. It has been only real money that had withstood the test of time. See, there you go again, smiled rich dad. All you are doing is repeating someone else's opinion about what is an asset rather than checking out the facts. Gold is Gold is only an asset by my definition. If you buy it for less than you sell it for, Rich Dad said slowly. In other words, if you bought it for $100 and sold it for 200, then it was an asset. But if you bought once for $200 and you sold it for 100, then gold in this transaction was liability. But if you bought one once for $200 and you sold it for $100, then gold in this transaction was liability. It's actual financial number of transactions that ultimately tell you facts. In reality, the only thing that is an asset or liability to you. For ultimately, it is you that can make gold an asset and you can make it liability. That is why financial education is so important. I have seen so many people take a perfectly good business or a piece of real estate and turn it into financial nightmare. Many people do the same with their personal life. They take hard earned money and create a lifetime of financial liabilities. I was even more confused, a little hurt inside, and I wanted to argue. Rich Dad was toying with my brain. Many a man has been suckered because he did not know the facts. Every day I hear horror stories of someone who lost their money because they thought an opinion was a fact. It is okay to use an opinion when making a financial decision, but you would best know the difference. Millions upon millions of people have made life decisions based upon opinions handed down from generation to generation, and then they wonder why they struggle financially. Rich Dad chuckled to himself before he answered. Well, let me give you a few common ones we have all heard. Rich Dad began listing a few as he chuckled quietly, apparently laughing at humor of being human beings. Some of examples he gave that day were Some of the examples he gave that day were: first, you should marry him, he will make a good husband. Second, find a secure job and stay there all your life. Third, doctors make a lot of money. Fourth, they have big house, they must be rich. 5, he has a big muscle, he must be healthy. 6, this is a nice car, only driven by a little old lady. 7, there is not enough money for everyone to be rich. 8, earth is flat. 9, humans will never fly. 10, he is smarter than his sister. 11, bonds are safer than stocks. 12, people who make mistakes are stupid. 13, he will never sell for such a low price. 14, she will never go out with me. 15, investing is risky. 16, I'll never be rich. 17, I didn't go to college, so I will never get ahead. 18, you should diversify your investments. 19, you shouldn't diversify your investments. Rich Dad went on and on until finally he could tell I was tired of hearing his example of opinions. Okay, I finally said, I have heard enough. What is your point? Thought you would never stop me, smiled Rich Dad. The point is, most people's lives are determined by their opinions rather than the facts. For a person's life to change, they first need to change their opinions. Then start looking at the facts. If you can read financial statements, you will be able to see the facts, not only company's financial success. If you can read financial statements, you can tell immediately how an individual is doing rather than going by your somebody else's opinion. As I said, one is better than other. To be successful in life, especially financially, you must know the difference. If you cannot verify something is a fact, then it is an opinion. Financial blindness is when a person cannot read numbers, so they must take someone else's opinion. Financial insanity is caused when opinions are used as fact. If you want to be on the right side of quadrant, You must know difference between facts and opinions. Few lessons are more important than this one. I sat there listening quietly, doing my best to understand what he was saying. It was obviously a simple concept, yet it was larger than my brain could accept at this moment. Do you know what due diligence means? Rich Dad asked. Due diligence simply means finding out what are opinions and what are facts. When it comes to money, most people are either lazy or searching for shortcuts, so they do not do enough due diligence. And there is still others who are so afraid of making mistakes that all they do is due diligence and then do nothing. Too much due diligence is also called analysis paralysis. The point is, you must know how to sift, shift through facts and opinions and then make your decisions. As I said, most people are in financial trouble today simply because they have taken too many shortcuts and are making their lives financial decisions based upon opinions. Often, the opinions of employee and self employed are and not the facts. If you want to become a business person or an investor, you must be keenly aware of this difference. I did not fully appreciate Rich Dad's lesson that day, yet few lessons have served me better than know the difference between facts and opinions, especially when it comes to handling my money. Years later, in the early 1990s, my rich dad watched the stock market climb out of sight. His comment was, that is what happens when highly paid employees or self-employed people with big paychecks paying excessive amount of taxes, greatly in debt, and with only paper asset in their portfolio begin handling out investment advice. Millions are about to get hurt following the opinion of people who think they know the facts. Warren Buffett, America's greatest investor, once said, if you are poker in a poker game and after 20 minutes you do not know who the patsy is, then you are the patsy. Why people struggle financially? I heard recently that most people will be in debt from day they leave school until they die. This is average middle class Americans financial picture. This is income statement, job, then liabilities, then expenses. So this is income statement. Inside income statement we have income. Then from income job, from job income goes to liabilities, which is mortgage, car loan debt, consumer debt, credit card debt, school loan debt. Then there is asset column. And inside expenses, these are taxes, payroll tax, income tax, property tax, mortgage payment, credit card payment, etc. Now someone else balance sheet. If you now understand the game, then you may realize that those liabilities listed must show up on someone else's balance sheet like this. So this is income statement. Now from asset column, mortgage, car loan debt, consumer debt, credit card debt, school loan debt. So these are assets. Now it goes into income. Anytime you hear these words, low down, easy monthly payments, or don't worry, the government will give you tax break for those losses. Then you know someone is luring you into the game. If you want to be financially free, you have got to be little smarter than that. For most people, no one is in debt to them. They have no real estate. For most people, no one is in debt to them. They have no real asset, things that put money in their pocket, and they are often in debt to everyone else. That is why they cling to job security and struggle financially. If it were not their job, they have be broke in a flash. It is being said that average American is less than 3 paychecks away from bankruptcy just because they sought a better life and got run over by the game. The deck is stacked against them. They still think their house, car, golf club, clothes, vacation home, and other doodads are assets. They believed what someone else told them. They have to believe it because they cannot read financial numbers. They cannot tell facts from opinions. Most people go to school and learn to be players in game, but no one explained the game to them. Money is an idea. One of my favorite songs is The Gambler by Kenny Rogers. One line sums up this whole chapter. If you are going to play the Game Boy, you have got to learn to play it right. I hope you now understand the basics of cash flow quadrant and know that the money really is an idea that is more clearly seen with your mind than your eyes. Learning the game of money and how it is played is an important part of your journey to financial freedom. More important though is who you need to become to move to the right side of cash flow quadrant.